This is Kurtop with you, and these are 100 myths confirmed by modern archaeology. The first step out of the water was not far from Edinburgh, in an abandoned quarry where paleontologists lifted a slab of volcanic ash and saw a tiny skeleton, only 10 centimeters long, but with distinct little legs and a paddle-like tail. They named the find West Lothiana. It no longer had gills, which means it breathed air, but its skin was smooth and still afraid of drying out. Analysis of zircons showed an age of 346 million years, which is 14 million years earlier than the official emergence of vertebrates onto land. You can already make out the future tiny wrist and fingers in its limbs, almost like ours. The little creature lived on the edge of the swamp, crawled out for insects, and instantly slipped back into the water. One such transitional organism moves the starting line of terrestrial evolution and shows that there are still many empty cells in the ancient calendar. The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, Central Italy. About 100 kilometers from Rome, in the mountains, there is the round Lake Sirente, about 140 meters in diameter. Geologists believe it is a crater formed by a meteorite impact. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the ejecta gives a date of around 312 AD, which is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. Swedish researcher Jens Ormjö suggested a simple version. A bright fireball in a mushroom-shaped dust cloud could have looked like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea describes the vision of the cross and the light, after which Constantine ordered the symbol to be placed on the shields and won. Calculations give an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash could be seen from very far away. In archaeology nearby, there are indirect traces, a village abandoned in the 4th century mass burials in catacombs, and local legends about a sunstar that split oaks. There is no direct evidential link between the meteorite and Constantine's vision. It's a hypothesis, but the coincidence of date, scale, and visibility makes it one of the most convincing. A natural event may have triggered the decision to legalize Christianity across the Roman Empire. The remains of a millennia-old surgeon. Archaeologists studied a burial discovered at the Huacha Las Ventanas site and found that it belonged to a member of the Sican culture. According to scientists, the buried person lived around 900 to 1050 AD and practiced surgery on the northern coast of Peru, around 700 AD. The Sican archaeological culture was formed, which lasted until around 1375, when this region was conquered by the Chimu civilization. Researchers have discovered large public and ceremonial complexes of this culture, including several dozen pyramids up to 25, 100 feet high, such as the Batan Grande and Tucume monuments. There was strong social differentiation in this society, which was reflected in their burial rituals. Representatives of the Sican elite were buried in deep shafts along with a large amount of grave goods, including items made of precious metals, such as large gold masks. At the beginning of 2022, archaeologists from the Sican National Museum conducted a study of a burial that was excavated due to the threat of flooding from the waters of the La Leche River in the southern necropolis of the Huaca Las Ventanas site. Scientists found out that it belonged to a person who lived during the Middle Sican period. Along with the remains, the researchers discovered a set of awls, needles, and knives of various sizes, some of which had wooden handles. From this, they concluded that the person was engaged in surgery during his lifetime. Archaeologist Carlos Aliera of the Sican National Museum reported that the burial inventory of this individual also included a gold mask painted with cinnabar, a breastplate, and a kind of poncho with copper plates. In addition, the scientists had at their disposal gilded copper bowls, a ceremonial tumi knife, as well as a ceramic vessel with 2 necks and a bridge handle decorated with an image of King Waku. The results shocked the scientists. The results shocked the scientists. The results shocked the scientists. The law was kept at the University of Warsaw and was shrouded in mystery. Finally, it found a logical explanation. Previously, it was believed that this was a male priest named Kor Jakuti, who lived in the 1st century before Christ. However, in 2015, Polish researchers decided to perform a computed tomography scan and discovered that it was a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The images supposedly show the bones of a fetus, a tiny hand, and a leg. This caused huge interest in the scientific world, because this could have been the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, researchers noticed deformations on the skull of the mysterious lady, and they suggested that aggressive cancer could have been the cause of death. However, over time, doubts began to arise. Radiologist Sakkar Salem from Cairo immediately pointed out that there was no anatomical evidence of a fetus, and asked a logical question: why did the bones disappear, but the soft tissues of the baby were preserved? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Brolinskaya and her colleagues revisited the case and conducted a reanalysis of more than 1,400 computed tomography scans. 4 independent groups worked on it, and they all came to the same conclusion: there was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be clumps of tissue left over from irregularities in the mummification process. The same goes for the supposed cancer. The skull was damaged while removing the brain, which often happens with careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again, but now without the sensational headlines. This story highlights the importance of double-checking even major scientific discoveries. The Lake of Skeletons. At the bottom of Rupkund Lake in the Indian Himalayas, hundreds of human skeletons have been discovered, which gave it the name Lake of Skeletons. The age of these remains varies greatly, and it is still not exactly known how all these people died. It was previously assumed that they might have been victims of a single disaster, such as a powerful storm that took the lives of a large group of people. Recent studies have only made the mystery more complicated. Scientists conducted DNA analysis of 38 discovered bodies and found that the remains belonged to people from different eras, with a difference of thousands of years. These people arrived at the lake at different periods of time, which disproved the theory of the mass death of a single group. The research began 10 years ago when geneticist Kumarasamy Tangarash from the Indian Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology sequenced the mitochondrial DNA of 72 skeletons. Some were of Indian origin, but some of the remains belonged to people with DNA characteristic of residents of Western Europe, particularly Crete and Greece. Interestingly, the time range of these findings also turned out to be diverse. Most of the bones date back to the 7th-10th centuries AD, but among them are remains from the 19th-20th centuries as well. The causes of death of these people remain unknown, which adds to the mystery of this place: the footprints of the gods. In the Ain Dara temple in northern Syria, in the arid lands, there is a unique archaeological site, Ain Dara, a complex of structures surrounding a majestic central temple that has no analogs in its characteristics. One of its remarkable features is the giant footprints on the threshold, each up to 1 meter long, clearly indicating their non-human origin. According to local residents, the footprints were left by a deity, and the temple resembles the biblical description of Solomon's temple. It dates back to the Iron Age Syro-Hittite kingdoms, which emerged after the collapse of the Hittite Empire around 1180 before Christ, and lasted until 700 before Christ. It was discovered in 1955. Archaeological excavations have made it possible to study its structure and decorations in more detail. The temple rises on an embankment and is surrounded by a gallery. Its foundation consists of massive basalt blocks. The walls are decorated with intricate carvings depicting geometric patterns and mythical animals, which testifies to the high craftsmanship of its creators. The entrance is guarded by lions and sphinxes carved from stone. Nevertheless, it is still not established to whom exactly the temple was dedicated. There is a suggestion that it might have been dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, but there is no exact data. The giant human footprints not only confirm the connection of the structure with ancient myths and deities, but also emphasize its cultural, religious, and mystical significance. However, in 2018, a huge part of this temple was destroyed by airstrikes. A guide on exorcising a ghost. In the storage rooms of the British Museum, there was a palm-sized clay tablet from Babylon, dated to around 1500 before Christ. Only under certain lighting did the engraved image become visible, a ghost of a man with bound hands being led by a woman holding a rope. On the reverse side, there is a cuneiform text deciphered by philologist Irving Finkel, which is a detailed guide on how to bind and then banish a restless spirit. The steps are as follows. 2 figurines are made from wax or clay, one male, representing the ghost himself, and one female as his companion. Vessels with beer, bread, and a wooden bowl are placed in front of the figurines. Incantations are recited, offering the spirit to accept the treat and leave. After the ritual, the figurines are wrapped in cloth and buried at dawn, a signal that a new home has been found for the soul and it will not return to the living anymore. The text uses the word mashkim, meaning the watcher, which refers to a spirit that has not found peace. The tablet adds to our understanding of medicine and magic. The treatment used herbs and administrative actions related to the dead. The artifact's main value is its rare combination of illustration and instructions in Mesopotamia. This is a visual manual for a priest-exorcist, showing that 3,500 years ago people were already developing step-by-step protocols for dealing with what we would now call psychological trauma. 1,290 Roman coins in Switzerland. Amateur archaeologist Daniel Leuden discovered a hoard of 1,290 Roman coins in Switzerland, all of which were minted from copper alloy in the first half of the 4th century AD, during the reign of Constantine the Great, before the Roman conquest. The territory of modern Switzerland was inhabited by various Celtic tribes, such as the Helvetii and the Vendelici, who were carriers of the Latin archaeological culture, as well as the Rhaetians, representatives of the Fritzens Nansen culture, whose origin remains quite debatable. However, Octavian Augustus began in the 35th year before Christ a series of military campaigns aimed at conquering the Alpine region, Raetia and Noricum. The Rhaetians were among the last to be subdued around 1513 before Christ. After that, most of them were either destroyed or sold into slavery, and the remaining ones were Romanized. The Roman period was marked by the urbanization of modern Switzerland, with numerous settlements and a developed road network appearing, as well as the spread of the Latin language and Roman religion. During this period, cities such as Zurich, Basel, Geneva, and Lausanne were founded. However, starting from the year 264, when the Alemanni invaded Switzerland, the Romans gradually lost control over these lands, and finally the Germanic tribes conquered them in the 5th century. Amateur archaeologist Daniel Leuden found several Roman coins and fragments of pottery, which he reported to professional archaeologists. The scientists who arrived at the site extracted the vessel with the coins, along with the surrounding soil for laboratory research. After performing a computed tomography scan, they noticed that the coins inside the pot were divided into 2 parts. It was later discovered that there was cattle hide inside the vessel. The archaeologists struggled to explain why this was done. It is possible that the coins belonged to 2 different people. All the coins found are roughly equivalent to 1 gold solidus, weighing 4.55 grams, which is equal to 2 months' wages for a Roman soldier. Prehistoric butterfly. Imagine a public toilet that's 250 million years old. In the northwest of Argentina, the rock is covered with fossilized piles left by ancient dicynodonts, herbivores the size of a hippopotamus. Scientists break open one of these coprolites, expecting to find only a mash of plant matter, but under the microscope, they discover shimmering microscopic scales. Tiny plates that today cover the wings of butterflies and moths. There are almost 100 of them, and each one fits perfectly into the structure of modern lepidopterans. The layer is 247 million years old, which is 46 million years older than all known butterfly fossils. This means the first nocturnal flyers flew over prehistoric forests before flowers or beetle pollinators appeared on land. The species will be named Amphitheria eloisea in honor of a young researcher who managed to describe the discovery but passed away from cancer. A tiny scale bridges a huge gap between the molecular clock of evolution and the stone record, reminding us that even in droppings, there are keys to the bigger story. Why did people try to dismantle the pyramids of Giza? The Egyptian pyramids have been considered a wonder of the world for centuries, astonishing the imagination of each new generation. Few realize that Egypt's rulers' greed has repeatedly put them at risk of being lost forever. The 12th century by our standards is ancient history, but even then the pyramids of Giza were as old as they are today. However, the young Sultan of Egypt, Al-Aziz Usman, did not value antiquities very much and therefore decided to demolish them. Historians are not exactly sure what motivated him. Some say that he believed treasures were buried not only inside the chambers of the Menkaure pyramid but also beneath the foundation of the structure. Others say that he wanted to destroy the pyramids in order to use the stone to build a new city wall. This seems like a plausible explanation, since other Egyptian leaders demolished smaller pyramids to obtain stone for construction. Al-Aziz apparently did not care much about the historical significance of the pyramids. Moreover, he didn't even know about it. He knew they were very old, but people at that time didn't know who built the pyramids or why. During certain historical periods, people didn't know at all that these were the tombs of kings. They thought that maybe these were ancient granaries. The Sultan ordered his people to begin demolishing the pyramid of Mykerinos. However, the attempt did not succeed. Historians have often described how incredibly difficult it was to build such large structures without modern equipment. As it turned out, demolishing such structures without modern technology is no easier. The workers managed to loosen several huge blocks, which fell into the desert sand and surely crushed some of the onlookers who had gathered. But the process was so slow that Al-Aziz eventually called off the workers, and the opening they managed to dismantle still exists to this day. That was not the last time someone tried to dismantle the pyramids. Modern Egypt was born in the 19th century under the ruler Muhammad al-Pasha, who wanted to dismantle the pyramids and use the rubble to build a dam and block the Nile. He reasoned that he would get rid of the old and give it new life by putting it to use for modern technology. According to history, the salvation of the pyramids fell to the chief French engineer, Lenan Pasha. Lenan volunteered to lead the commission studying the costs of the project, and thanks to some clever calculations, he convinced the Sultan that he could save a lot of money simply by quarrying the necessary stone for construction. Lenin himself told this story many times, although he constantly changed some important facts, for example, confusing the name of the Sultan he served under. It's possible that Lenan's involvement was just his imagination, and the Egyptian engineers themselves concluded that it's easier to quarry stone in a regular quarry, since gravel is cheap, while dismantling the pyramid is the opposite. The tomb of an unknown pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists found the tomb of a pharaoh that's about 3,600 years old. It's located 7 meters deep in an ancient necropolis known as the Mountain of Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. Most likely it was looted. Back in ancient times, the pharaoh's name was written on the plaster at the entrance, but it has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that it could be one of the lesser-known rulers, for example, Sinaib or Abid Pantejeni, who are mentioned in other sources, but their burials have not been found to this day. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in Egypt's history when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty, whose representatives may have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of the earlier and more influential pharaoh Neferhotep I, and its architecture resembles both the burial sites of the Middle Kingdom and a later ancient settlement that was destroyed by a tsunami. Scientists have discovered traces of a powerful earthquake and tsunami that destroyed a settlement on the Chilean coast 3,800 years ago. People who lived on the coast of the Atacama Desert in Chile 5,700 to 4,000 years ago built villages of small stone houses on foundations made of shells. These houses stood close to each other with exits to inner courtyards, and the dead were buried under their floors. The floor and walls were held together by a mortar made of ash, seaweed, seawater, and shells. Diego Salazar from the University of Chile and his colleagues studied these settlements and found large-scale destruction in them. For example, in one of the destroyed houses, the stones were carried away from the sea as if knocked out by a giant wave, while in another, the building materials were scattered toward the sea. It was probably dragged by the water returning to the sea. In another settlement, archaeologists found layers of sand and soil with many shells mixed in. Radiocarbon analysis showed that among the relatively new shells, there are old ones, as if a wave tore them out of the ground and mixed them together. After analyzing the destruction, scientists concluded that 3,800 years ago, a powerful tsunami occurred. The wave destroyed the settlement and caused upheaval in society. The reconstruction showed that the earthquake was caused by a giant thrust and the subduction contact between the South American tectonic plate and the Nazca plate. The seismic level of the earthquake must have reached 9.5, which slightly exceeds the most powerful Chilean earthquake of 2010. Live Boy. The Assyrians are known for their military achievements and technological innovations, which had a significant impact on history. They created the first regular army, introduced cavalry to replace chariots, and developed military engineering units with siege weapons. These innovations made the Assyrians one of the most powerful military forces of their time. But aside from their notorious brutality on the battlefield, there is an interesting fact about how they solved the problem of crossing rivers. One of the unique inventions of the Assyrians was an individual flotation device, a prototype of the modern life ring. These skins, made from animal hides, were easily inflated and helped them stay afloat, allowing warriors to cross rivers safely and avoid the danger of drowning. This simple yet ingenious idea was extremely effective and allowed the Assyrians to move quickly even through difficult water obstacles, giving them a tactical advantage. This invention can be considered an early predecessor of modern lifebuoys. Such water skins helped not only warriors, but were also used in everyday life for ferrying people and goods. This method was practical and widely used in regions with large rivers and bodies of water. Trade in ochre, tools, and narcotics. Scientists have discovered quarries built 1,100 years ago. They were part of the vast trading system of the indigenous Australian people, Mitaka. It was called the Australian Silk Road. The indigenous Australian people lived at the very center of a vast trade route, which is compared in scale to the Silk Road. Archaeologists have found sites of sandstone extraction in Australia on an industrial scale. As far as researchers know, they are the largest in the southern hemisphere, which means that the trading systems of the first people of Australia were on a global level. These territories were called the Land of Channels because of the erosion of streams that were filled with water from monsoon rains. Archaeologists have discovered that the quarries of the Mitaka people who lived here were part of a well-developed trading system. They produced whetstones, silicate tools, seeds, and much more there. The whetstones were extracted and processed. On the land of the Mitaka people, they exchanged them for wooden items, stone axes, and pottery. The land of the Mitaka was once the center of a vast transcontinental trade route that stretched from the Gulf of Carpentaria in the north to the Flinders Ranges in southern Australia. The director of the Mitaka Indigenous Corporation, Tracy Coos, said that these objects are proof that they had a truly developed economy. A hieroglyphic inscription that is 5,200 years old. While working in El Kawi, near the ancient Egyptian city of El Kab, a team of archaeologists from Belgium, the United States, and Egypt found a 5,200-year-old rock hieroglyphic inscription. This makes it one of the oldest monuments of Egyptian writing. The group of images includes a bull's head on a short pole, followed by two storks, jabiru, standing back to back, and above them, an ibis. A similar arrangement of symbols is found in later Egyptian depictions of the solar cycle. The inscription was created around 3,250 before Christ, with individual signs reaching up to half a meter in height, and the entire inscription being 70 centimeters tall. These recent discoveries of images on stone preserve some of the earliest and largest extensive inscriptions dating back to the period of the formation of Egyptian hieroglyphic writing, and demonstrate how the ancient Egyptians invented their unique writing system. Zombie grave. In a recently discovered burial near Oppen in Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, archaeologists found amazing Bronze Age artifacts connected to ancient superstitions. In the grave, the remains of a man were found lying on his side with his legs pinned down by a heavy stone about a meter long and 50 centimeters wide. In this way, those who buried him tried to prevent his return to the world of the living. According to the head of the excavation, U.V. Moas, the man aged between 40 and 60 was positioned facing east, which indicates the cultural rituals of that time. Moas. He suggests that the deceased either suffered from a serious illness or was not respected among his own people. It is claimed that the man could have been part of the bell beaker culture, which is characterized by a certain style of pottery. In those distant times, people sincerely believed in the existence of revenants, the dead who sought to return to the world of the living. The means of combating them were varied, ranging from piercing bodies with spears to placing heavy stones on the bodies to prevent them from rising from the dead. Potosek the slave, a dark-skinned slave who lived in Brazil in the 19th century, went down in history as a stud bull used to increase the number of slaves on plantations. His real name was Roque Jose Florencio, and he became the father of more than 200 children from different women. These children, born for labor, inherited the status of slaves. Their birth was part of the owner's plan to increase the workforce on the plantations. The situation worsened in early 1808 when Britain banned the slave trade. This event led to a decrease in the flow of slaves from Africa, which threatened the business of the plantation owners. In response, they began increasing the number of slaves by raising the birth rate among the existing slaves. Pato Seca, thanks to his physical attributes, height of 218 centimeters and strong build, became the ideal candidate for this purpose. He was bought specifically for this role and brought to a plantation near São Paulo. Interestingly, Pato Seca did not do hard labor, but lived separately from the other slaves, wore good clothes, and carried out simple tasks for his master. Despite his privileges, he remained a slave whose main duty was to impregnate the slave women chosen by his master. His life, although comparatively easier, was still essentially humiliating. Pato Seca's children had no special status. They became ordinary slaves, were subjected to abuse, and could even be killed with impunity. Many of these children became parents themselves. Recent genetic studies have shown that about 30% of the population of the Santa Eudoxia San Carlos district are descended from Pato Seca. Pato Seca lived to see the abolition of slavery in Brazil in 1888. He was still young enough and received a plot of land from his former master. On this land, Pato built a house, married a woman named Palmyra, and became the father of 9 children. He spent the rest of his life as a free man, taking care of his family and the new generation that no longer knew slavery. Kilometer-long traces of ancient civilizations. I'll tell you about a few strange places on Earth where there are things that look a lot like runways, only they were created thousands of years ago. Civilizations of the past could very well have had flying machines, ranging from things similar to modern airplanes to vimanas and saucer-shaped craft. There are several places in the world that everyone calls the runways of ancient civilizations, and historians aren't bothered by this at all. But now, let's talk in more detail about these places, starting with one of the main cities of the Maya civilization, Teotihuacan. I could talk about the pyramids, but the topic is a bit different. Right from these pyramids, very close to the ancient city, is the so-called Avenue of the Dead. Strangely enough, this is a straight road stretching for 2.5 kilometers, which at one point just ends abruptly. That is, it starts in the ancient Maya city and leads nowhere, which is, at the very least, strange and illogical. Most likely, that's not enough to claim that this road is a runway, but this is just one example. Let's move on. Next up is Gambia and Yundu Airport, which opened at the very end of the 20th century, as well as a runway built directly on top of an ancient one. It so happened that even before the airport, there was already a line there with a length of 3.6 kilometers. This line was built from large monolithic stone slabs that were fitted together with perfect precision. In 1996, approximately most of this ancient strip was simply covered with asphalt, and some parts on both sides remained untouched, meaning the runway was made a bit smaller than the ancient one. Obviously, no one knows what these ancient strips at the site of the modern airport are. The funniest thing is that these monolithic slabs didn't even interest the scientists. They were just covered with asphalt. And finally, what is unknown are the lines on the Nazca Plateau. There are no cities or settlements there at all, unlike the 2 previously described strips. But everything is made almost the same way. From above, you can see that there are several large lines on the Nazca Plateau, each stretching for several kilometers as well. No one knows what it was intended for or when it appeared either. Perhaps there are still these very ancient runways somewhere else in the world. I doubt that any other explanation can be found for such places, except that they were meant for the takeoff or landing of some kind of flying craft from the past. A bird plane. 25 to 28 million years ago, Pelagornis, the largest flying bird we know of, flew over the ocean. Its wingspan reached over 7 meters. That's almost like a small airplane. Its bones were thin and hollow like tubes. Despite its size, its weight remained relatively low, so the bird could stay in the air for hours. Its main tool was a long beak with bony tooth-like projections along the edges. These weren't real teeth, but bone outgrowths, but it provided an excellent grip, allowing it to catch slippery fish and cephalopods right at the water's surface. It is believed that Pelagornis would take off from coastal cliffs, spread its wings, catch an updraft, and glide over the waves with almost no wing beats. They are found all over the world: South Carolina, Morocco, Japan, New Zealand, even Antarctica. This means the birds crossed oceans, following winds and upwelling zones where fish are most abundant, but their unique flying skills made them vulnerable. By the end of the Pliocene, the climate cooled, wind patterns changed, feeding zones disappeared, and competition with marine mammals intensified. The genus Pelagornis disappeared. Its place was partially taken by albatrosses, but no one ever reached such size again. Pelagornis is a good example of evolution pushed to the limit. Nature got everything it could out of flight, but the price was high: dependence on a stable oceanic climate. A rare bone cross. Director of the State Museum Reserve Rostov-Kremlin, Alexander Filyaev, reported on an interesting find by archaeologists. A rare bone cross measuring 6 by 3.5 by 1 centimeters was found. On the front side, the Virgin Mary and Ioan Bogoslav are depicted, and on the reverse side, a saint is shown in full height. The inscription on the cross is illegible and is probably considered to be Nicole. It is assumed that this is an image of Saint Nikolai. Research in the Metropolitan Chambers is ongoing alongside major restoration at the site, with excavations led by the museum's Archaeological department. According to preliminary data, the cross that was found dates back to the 16th century. It was discovered in layers that formed before the 1650s, 1660s, before the construction of the building. A fingerprint from the past. During the Temple Mount sifting project in Jerusalem, archaeologists were washing soil that had been removed from the slope of the Temple Mount. Among the grains of soil, a tiny clay bulla appeared. This is a seal that was used in ancient times to close bags or vessels. Its diameter is 13 millimeters. On one side, the inscription is clearly legible. It belongs to Yediah, son of Osayahu. The style of writing and carbon dating placed the artifact at the end of the 7th or the beginning of the 6th century, before Common Era, which is the era of the First Temple. The name Osayahu is mentioned in the Bible. If it's the same person, the seal could have been his son's, suggesting that even top officials' families could handle official business. On the reverse side, the fingerprint of the owner has been preserved, a rare personal code of an ancient official. The surface was analyzed using reflectance transformation imaging, multiple lighting exposures, followed by a 3D model based on the relief of the script. The discovery is significant because it links the biblical name to physical evidence and confirms Judea's administrative system. On the eve of the Babylonian destruction of the temple, the tomb is more than 5,000 years old. Construction was planned on the territory where the burial ground is located, but now archaeologists will study this place in detail. The scale of the burial ground can be assessed thanks to drone footage taken during the excavations. According to the archaeologists, the tomb is in excellent condition, and its size is simply impressive. Usually such large graves were collective, which means that several people are buried there, most likely belonging to the same clan or family. The grave consists of large stone blocks. According to scientists, the stones were brought to this place from afar during the Ice Age. How ancient people could have done this remains a big mystery. The tomb was discovered by accident during a land survey before planned construction. Now it will have to be postponed indefinitely so that scientists can thoroughly study the find, whose historical value is beyond question. Temple, Dacia. Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of Dacian culture. It dates back to around 450 before Christ. It is known as the helmet from Kotsufinishti and is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry art, but also a symbol of power and ritual strength. Adorned with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or a chieftain who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to gaze at enemies, instilling fear and protecting its owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery. Several unique exhibits were stolen from the Drenthe Wassenaar Museum in the Netherlands, where the exhibition Dacia, Land of Gold and Silver, was being held, including this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to the cultural heritage of the Dacian treasures. A mysterious scroll was found in the Judean desert, which was named the Horoscope. It belongs to the ancient text connected with the secret teachings of the mysterious sect called the Children of Light. This unique manuscript attracted the attention of scholars with its content, touching on astrology and elements of mysticism that were practiced thousands of years ago. The scroll is written in Hebrew, but there are also symbols in Greek, Aramaic, and ancient Hebrew. A distinctive feature of the text is that it is written in reverse order from right to left, which indicates its special significance for the sect. Dr. Oren Abelman, a specialist in the Judean Desert Scrolls, suggests that the text may have been used as instructions for the upper leadership of this sect. The horoscope includes a unique belief system, claiming that a person's date of birth influences their zodiac sign, characteristics, and the balance between light and darkness in their soul. According to the scroll, each day of the year is associated with a certain degree of light or darkness, which in turn affects the inherent quality of good or evil in a person. The text also mentions a strict initiation process for new members of the Children of Light sect. The scroll was used to create individual horoscopes, where the date of birth determined the candidate's personal and physical characteristics. According to Dr. Abelman, this process was not just a ritual, but a test of the candidate's ability to fully accept the teachings and customs of the sect. The Wieliczka Salt Mine. The Wieliczka Mine is located near Krakow in Poland. It is a grand underground complex that has been in operation since the 13th century, with 9 levels descending to a depth of more than 327 meters. An astonishing amount of rock salt has been extracted here, about 200 million tons. Today, the Wieliczka Mine is a popular tourist attraction. Visitors can embark on an exciting journey through the historic and mythical halls of the mine, where they will find magnificent salt sculptures, including the famous work, The Last Supper, as well as various chandeliers made from salt minerals. The mine also houses a resort where guests can try halotherapy, treatment using salt, which is believed to help with various respiratory diseases and skin problems. The origin of Chinese civilization. Many people know that Chinese civilization is considered one of the oldest that has survived to this day, but Chinese scientists are trying to delve even deeper in their studies of antiquity, and there are all the prerequisites for this. Discoveries of ancient skulls found in the territory of China help in studying the origin of Chinese civilization. One of them is the Yunxiang man, whose skull is over 1 million years old. The fossil is the 3rd ancient human skull in this region, and it is the 3rd Yunxiang man skull. The skull was found in Xi'an, Hubei province, in central China, and belongs to Homo erectus. Even the dirt in which the skull was found has research value, and it is already being studied in the laboratory. Yunxiang man lived about 1 million years ago. What was the key moment in evolution? Homo erectus, the connecting link between earlier and later species such as Homo erectus pekinensis, is a fossil that represents an important discovery for the study of Homo erectus evolution, its origin and development in China and the rest of China, as well as East Asia. After all, once upon a time, this Yunxiang man lived on our planet. He might have had a family and children. He fished and went hunting. He was interested in something. Maybe he could sing, making different sounds, but he couldn't swim. He could build houses from branches and clay, but he couldn't cook food. He experienced emotions from his life just like we do now. He simply lived. Many years before we appeared from ancient China, we will go to study ancient plumbing in Rome. The remains of a guy with a wolf's mouth. Archaeologists discovered the remains of 2 individuals in Slovakia who were buried in the 17th or 18th century in a storage pit and in a hastily dug grave. Some of them belonged to a young man who had orofacial clefts, a wolf's mouth, and a cleft lip. According to scientists, their deaths may have been violent, since people with such defects were considered vampires in some societies. Today, one of the most common craniofacial developmental defects is orofacial clefts, which occur in about 1.4 out of every 1,000 newborns. Doctors distinguish three main forms of this congenital defect: cleft lip, and palate, or just cleft palate. In everyday language, the terms hare lip and wolf's mouth are used to describe such conditions. Both genetic and environmental factors are involved in the pathogenesis of this disease. Although orofacial clefts are quite common today in the archaeological context, remains of people with such developmental defects are rare. The most famous exception is Pharaoh Tutankhamun, whose tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings in 1922. In addition to a cleft palate, paleopathologists diagnosed him with clubfoot, Köhler's disease, and several other illnesses and injuries. In total, archaeologists know of about 50 similar cases, and in 80% of them, orofacial clefts were found in adults. For example, the remains of one individual were found in Altai during the excavation of an Andronovo culture burial at the Versova 14 cemetery. He was a young man, 18 to 23 years old, who died around 1883 to 1665 before Christ. Scientists noted that the remains of a young man with a cleft lip and cleft palate were found in Slovakia for the first time in an archaeological context. Archaeologists reported that in modern populations, such a condition occurs noticeably more often. This may be because in the past, children with orofacial clefts often had high mortality rates, and infanticide occurred. In addition, the mother's diet could have reduced the prevalence of this developmental defect. The researchers concluded that both of these individuals could have been foreigners. It seems that the young man's body was lowered into the pit feet first and possibly tied up beforehand, while the adult man was lowered head or back first. According to archaeologists, the presence of bricks in the fill could be due to the fact that the buried individuals were considered dangerous dead. Although the scientists did not find any traumatic injuries, they did not rule out violent death, but it is also possible that they could have died from illness, hypothermia, or some other cause. The first king, Belize Jungli, ruled Karakol for almost 40 years. The archaeologist couple Arlen and Diana, who have excavated stairways, markets, and dams here, have not yet reached the heart of the Khan complex, the heavenly place. Beneath the thick slabs, they found a narrow passage, which led to a chamber painted with cinnabar. On the floor was a skeleton, its shoulders draped with jade beads. Nearby were 11 painted vessels, carved bone tubes, a mosaic mask, and shells from Pandilius, the color of raw meat. The hieroglyphs on the stele have long referred to the city's first ruler as Tikab-Chak, Hand of Thunder. Now the text matches the bone. The dating is around the year 350, just 2 or 3 decades after the ascension in 331. It turns out that Karakol was an independent power even before the famous arrival of the Teotihuacan envoys in 378. He didn't awaken due to outside influence. He was already ruling, trading, and collecting tribute. The items around the body speak for themselves. Jade is a sign of royal blood. Cinnabar is a symbol of sacrificial power. Shells from Pandilius indicate long-distance trade through the Caribbean, and the thin bone tubes are attributes of priests who inhaled cocoa powder before rituals. This is not a random collection, but portraits of the state assembled in its founder's personal capsule. For scientists, this skeleton marks the beginning of Karakol's history, concealed by the Lianaz for nearly 15 centuries. Huge stone spheres. Archaeologists excavated stone spheres on the small island of Isla del Caño and in the Diquís River Delta, where more than 300 similar spheres had already been found before. From tiny children's balls to massive ones weighing several tons and up to 3 meters wide. It is believed that they all appeared during the Chiriquí period, at the dawn of the pre-Columbian Diquís culture in the valley of the Rio Grande de Terraba. The Diquís society is considered advanced for its time, with complex social, economic, and political systems being developed there. The Diquís built large structures using boulders with rounded edges, paved platforms, burial sites, and round or rectangular mounds with stone walls. Stone spheres are found in rows on former public squares or along the approaches to the dwellings of the ruling elite and chiefs. It is still unclear why and how these spheres were created. It is quite possible that they appeared even before the Diquís, It is difficult to determine the exact dates because the spheres have been severely damaged due to the characteristics of the soil, changes in temperature and humidity in the environment, as well as floods caused by hurricanes and tropical storms. Another problem is the traces left by the banana company that operated in this region in the middle of the last century. The stone spheres of Costa Rica were probably made by shaping and polishing. To avoid cracking the spheres, they were fired with hot coals and then doused with cold water. After being shaped, they were polished using sand or leather. It's still unclear how the stones got into the jungle. Analysis of some of them showed that they are made of shell rock and limestone, which are found on the banks of the Diquís River, which flows at a considerable distance from where they were discovered. Without special transportation, it was practically impossible to move the multi-ton stone spheres. Moreover, similar clusters of spheres have also been found in the Volga region, the Komi Republic, on the beaches of California and New Zealand, the Franz Josef Land Islands, and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Scientists have suggested that the stone spheres may have a natural origin. They could have formed 50 to 60 million years ago. They emerged from deposits in the coastal zone of a sea basin. In that case, there should be a nucleus, like a fossil, an ancient shell, or an accumulation of carbonaceous material to which calcium carbonate or calcite accumulates. A triangular shield. 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, the capital of Bulgaria, archaeologists excavated a rare Roman watchtower. Its base is an equilateral triangle with sides about 7 meters long. Based on coins of Emperor Caracalla, it dates to the end of the 2nd century AD. This is unusual for the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The narrow tip of the tower faces the slope, so a battering ram or stones would slide along the wall without destroying the masonry. Inside, they found a stone well and remains of a wooden floor, which was rebuilt during the Byzantine era and the Second Bulgarian Empire in the 12th century. Such shapes are only found on the border with watchtowers. The Romans called such borderlines the limes, meaning the entire system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the border in Bulgaria. This is the earliest example of an irregular layout. Instead of the standard template, the engineers chose a geometry that fit the mountainous terrain more precisely. Today, the tower is part of the Urvich Museum complex. It shows that Roman builders were able to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. A strange, long stone. In the history of archaeology, there are discoveries made not only by scientists but also by ordinary people, often completely by accident. That's how a farmer from Michigan, James Brissell, stumbled upon an archaeological sensation when he decided to lay a gas pipeline through his ranch. When he started digging, James didn't expect any surprises, since the soil here was fertile and free of stones. But soon the excavator hit something. Worried about damaging the rented machine, the farmer stopped and decided to check the obstacle with a shovel. It turned out that it wasn't a stone, but something smooth and hard. Digging by hand, James soon realized that he was looking at a huge bone. He called his neighbors for help, and soon they managed to find several more bones. At first, no one could say for sure which animal they belonged to. After a few hours, the amateur archaeologist dug down to a spot where the bones joined into one large skull with tusks. At first, the farmers assumed it was an elephant, but to be sure, they called real scientists from the University of Michigan. Professor Fisher quickly identified the remains as those of a mammoth in excellent condition upon arrival at the site. He wanted to take the bones for study, but James refused to give them up, citing laws that allow the landowner to dispose of the finds at his own discretion. As a result, the farmer displayed the remains in his store, attracting tourists and scientists from all over the country and additionally selling his products. The mystery of Palenque's ancient inhabitants. In Mexico, archaeologists, using a very fine sieve, managed to sift through the deposits raised from the bottom of the sacrificial well in the mysterious ancient city of Palenque. The research identified what Maya representatives sacrificed to the gods. A short report on the discovery appeared on the National Institute of Anthropology and History website. Palenque in Chiapas is thought to have been the capital of the Bacul kingdom of the Maya civilization. It is believed that the city was founded in the 3rd century AD, but its main structures date back to the 7th and 8th centuries. Palenque perished in the 9th century. The cause of its collapse has not been determined. The city is full of mysteries and is famous for its bas-reliefs and carved slabs, which have not been found anywhere else. However, as part of a new project, archaeologists studied hundreds of animal remains, charcoal seeds, tiny beads made of shells, and other materials that were found at the bottom of a ritual well. As project participant Carlos Miguel Varela Scherer explained, all these items were sacrificial offerings to the gods. Their analysis not only made it possible to determine exactly what the Maya offered to their patrons, but also pointed to the wide variety of sacrificial items. In addition, the analysis made it possible to establish that the Maya held religious feasts. It was found that the sacrificial well contained remains of 17 different species. According to the analysis, the Maya offered to their gods mussels, land snails, freshwater crabs, white bass, quails, turtles, armadillos, domestic dogs, deer, and more as sacrifices in the cenote. In other words, the residents of Palenque used local resources for religious offerings, meaning everything they could obtain right there, just like in other Maya cities. When studying the sacrificial offerings, scientists have repeatedly found items that were imported, and often they were brought from very distant regions. The ancient Roman city and the longest white road used radar technology during archaeological research. It has been practiced for more than a year, but it was in 2020 that it most successfully proved its effectiveness. Not far from Rome, researchers used ground-penetrating radar to discover the ancient Roman city of Faleri Novi. Although Faleri Novi was considered well-studied and research began in the 19th century, there were previously no resources for large-scale excavations. It was geodetic radar surveying that made it possible to discover previously unknown architectural complexes to archaeologists in the city, walls, an amphitheater, a bath complex, and others. Another discovery made last year using radar is the longest white road. It is located in Central America on the Yucatan Peninsula. Archaeologists believe that the road is about 1,000 years old, and its construction was initiated by the queen of the Maya tribe, Kavil Ahav. 2. The Sphinx of Giza, Eastern Edge Plateau. Everyone knows the stone guardian near the Pyramid of Khafre, but in ancient texts, Egyptologist Bassam Ash-Sham found a strange duality: the Sphinx, the father of fear, and the Sphinx, the mother of fear. And this is what lies between the front paws of the current Sphinx. There stands the stele of Thutmose IV, and on it there are two creatures, not one. A clay tablet found nearby tells of a statue that was struck by lightning, which shattered its head. The lightning struck the metal crown. Lightning is attracted to metal. During recent ground-penetrating radar surveys, geophysicists from Cairo University examined the dunes south of the current Sphinx at a depth of about 4 meters. The instruments detected an elongated, dense outline, almost 60 meters long, matching the size of the surviving monument's body, without a head. The signature differs from typical limestone layers, which suggests it is a man-made object. The find remains unexcavated mainly due to the risk of sand collapse and cracks in nearby temple walls, and because officials worry about disputes over altering the plateau's appearance. While excavation is prohibited, the potential Sphinx mother remains under the sand, but the complex actually preserves half of the composition intended by its creators. The two sphinxes were carved from a single rock about 10,000 years ago, when the Sahara's climate was humid. Later, one of them lost its head due to a lightning strike. The destroyed statue was buried in sand. Superstitious priests feared restoring such a bad omen. 1,000 years later, Thutmose IV excavated and restored the surviving father of terror, but said nothing about the second. Since then, we've seen only half the original design, and while the mysterious shape stays buried in the sand, Giza's history remains incomplete, like a missing page from a great book. The lead sarcophagus will be opened. Archaeologists will open the mysterious sarcophagus from the burned Notre Dame Cathedral. French archaeologists have announced that a decision has been made to open the human-shaped lead sarcophagus found in the basement of Notre Dame Cathedral. After that, forensic experts from Toulouse will study its contents, determine the current condition of the skeleton, its gender, possible cause of death, take DNA samples, and clarify the age of the burial using radiocarbon dating. The sarcophagus, probably dating back to the 14th century, was discovered beneath Notre Dame Cathedral during reconstruction work after the devastating fire of 2019. Apparently, the anthropomorphic coffin was made for a high-ranking official in the early 14th century, that is, a century after the construction of the cathedral itself. To look inside the sarcophagus, which was deformed by the weight of earth and stones pressing down on it, experts tried to use an endoscopic mini-camera, but that was not enough. For a thorough study of the find, they were only able to see the upper part of the skeleton, pieces of fabric, hair, a pillow made of plant remains, and a number of as-yet unidentified objects. They did not manage to find a nameplate. The mummy's hand with a coin, a mummified child's hand holding a copper coin, became a unique discovery that puzzled scientists and opened new horizons for the study of mummification and the use of copper as an antimicrobial agent. Discovered in 2005 at the abandoned Ungár Lorenki Cemetery in Hungary, this find sparked wide interest among specialists. An analysis conducted by a team of researchers revealed that copper, present on the infant's body, contributed to the preservation of soft tissues. This became the first recorded case of mummification caused by copper. The scientists were also intrigued by the fact that the coin was in circulation in the mid-19th century, even though the burial took place in a cemetery that had been abandoned for many years before. Such a discovery became an example of a unique case of mummification using copper, which may attract the attention of researchers and archaeologists in the future. This discovery provides an opportunity to expand our knowledge about ancient civilizations, their traditions and customs, as well as the use of various materials and methods for preserving the dead. Scientists still need to study more similar cases to understand how copper and other materials were used in mummification and what beliefs and customs ancient cultures had related to this process. A new possible cause of dinosaur extinction. Scientists will never stop searching for the reason behind the demise of these ancient giants. The ancient world has always been associated with dinosaurs for people. They were the most mysterious creatures on our planet, and the extinction of such gigantic beings constantly sparks interest in the scientific community. Chinese scientists analyzed dinosaur egg fossils and discovered a steady decline in dinosaur diversity during the Cretaceous period. Such a decline weakened the dinosaurs' ability to adapt to environmental upheavals caused by major natural disasters. The dinosaur population directly depended on the success of hatching from eggs. To put it simply, if nothing had interfered with dinosaur eggs, dinosaurs would most likely have survived to this day. There are two main theories about the extinction of the giants: a huge asteroid and volcanic eruptions in the Deccan Traps in India. A lot of fossilized dinosaur remains have been found in China, and most importantly, eggs. Scientists are trying to determine the mass extinction cause by analyzing more than 1,000 samples of eggs, eggshells, and fossilized bones. Scientists have determined that the mass population decline began 72 million years ago, while the mass extinction occurred 66 million years ago. This suggests that dinosaurs began to die out gradually, long before their complete extinction. This is confirmed by fossils found in North America. According to research, it was also determined there that the population began to decline around the same period as in China. If things have become more or less clear with dinosaurs, now I'll tell you about the oldest baby carrier. Lednicki Face, Poland, Lake Lednica. During excavations in the coastal zone of the first Piast fortress, archaeologists raised an oak beam, 1 meter 34 centimeters long, part of a fortress hook that held the rampart from spreading. On one end there is a carved human face, an oval rim, an arch above the forehead, a rounded chin, measuring approximately 13.5 by 10 centimeters. The face looked at the water, not the fortress. Dendrochronology gave the exact age of the Trubodorivo as around 960-975 AD. That was the very time when the prince's residence, a chapel and baptismal pools, stood on Lednicki Island. For the Slavs of the 10th century, carved human faces on building elements were rare. Here, the image was placed on the outer side of the rampart, as if someone was addressing it to the lake. Perhaps this is the image of a water spirit or the patron of the crossing, or perhaps a reminder of Christianity on the border with paganism. The island, a key site for the Christianization of Polish lands, is compared to Slavic anthropomorphic figurines from Wolin and four-faced idols. There are stylistic similarities, but no direct analogies. Right now, the carved face is undergoing conservation. The wood is being stabilized so it doesn't crack in the air. The plan is to display the find at the Museum of the First Piasts in the second half of 2026. The most luxurious pirate port, Port Royal, known as the wickedest city on earth, was once the richest port in the Caribbean. This place was considered a center of luxury and debauchery, where the abundance of alcohol, gambling, and entertainment with women attracted pirates and adventurers from all over the world. However, a sudden earthquake on June 7, 1692, put an end to this splendor when 2/3 of the city sank underwater, taking many lives with it. The history of Port Royal began with the Taino people, who used this area for fishing until the Spanish took control of the region. However, the true potential of Port Royal was only revealed after the English conquered Jamaica. In 1654, they built Fort Cromwell, which was later renamed Fort Charles, and began using Port Royal as a strategic base for privateering operations under the leadership of Henry Morgan. This quickly turned the city into the largest trading port in the region. The catastrophe of 1692 marked a tragic and sudden end to Port Royal's prosperity. The earthquake and the subsequent tsunami destroyed most of the city within minutes, resulting in the deaths of 1,600 people and seriously injuring another 3,000. Despite this, the city that disappeared beneath the waters remains one of the most significant archaeological sites. Since the 1950s, archaeologists have discovered many well-preserved artifacts, including household items and even human remains. One of the discoveries, a pocket watch, made it possible to determine the exact time of the disaster, 1143. The oldest malt in Britain, the remains of a Roman malting house and charred grains with spelt, were found during excavations in Bedfordshire before the start of roadwork on the A428 highway. Experts analyzed the find and suggested that the people who lived in this area were engaged in brewing beer. The site, known as Phil 44, was excavated from July 2021 to February 2022. During the excavations, groups from the London Archaeological Museum and the Cambridge Archaeological Unit discovered malting houses from the late Roman period. The Iron Age in Britain lasted from around 800 before Christ until the arrival of the Romans. Scientists were able to determine that the charred grains found with the pelta were left to germinate before being dried in the kiln. This was probably done for the purpose of making malt. Specifically, no brewing equipment was found at the excavation site, so it is unknown where ancient people completed the beer brewing process. The project's scientific advisor, Rachel Ballantyne, believes that there were malt houses on the territory of FIL 44, and the raw materials were transported to another area. This also means that different communities in Britain were in close contact with each other. In 2019, evidence of ancient brewing was found during road repairs on the A14 highway in Cambridgeshire. At that time, remains of ancient beer, bread, and porridge were discovered. Scientists determined that the beer was made from barley, oats, and coarse flour, with herbs added. Ant skull, Catamarca, Argentina. Construction workers were digging a trench for a water pipeline and came across a series of burial urns. In one of them, they discovered a human skull of a very strange shape, which the local press dubbed the Ant-Man's head. The shape indeed is hard to consider ordinary. The forehead extends forward, the crown stretches back, and the skull appears squeezed in a vise. Naturally, people first thought of aliens and genetics, but archaeologists quickly cooled things down. Between the 3rd and 12th centuries, the Cienaga and Aguada cultures lived in these lands, and they practiced artificial cranial deformation. They simply wrapped the baby's head with cloth and fixed it between wooden boards. The soft bones gradually changed shape. Of course, you might ask why. It's simple. Beauty, belonging to a group, social status, just like today with tattoos or body modifications. It's important to note there's little evidence these practices harm health. A child's skull is flexible, and the brain grows to fill the available space. So most deformed skulls don't show signs of trauma or developmental delay. There's also an alternative explanation, hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of fluid. This was pointed out by Kaidi Dusan Kabas. But in that case, we would expect other changes: thinned bones, asymmetry. This skull is a good example of why such finds shouldn't be immediately attributed to historical anomalies. Sometimes a strange shape isn't a message from aliens, but a very human desire to look like your own people. Brewing. The history of beer dates back to the Neolithic era, more than 11,000 years ago. It is one of the oldest beverages that accompanied humanity in the early stages of its development. Some scientists even hypothesize that people started growing grain not for food, but to brew beer. This beverage may not have just been a way to quench thirst, but also played an important role in rituals and communication. Brewing is mentioned in one of the oldest literary works, the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is about 3,800 years old. This text was created in Mesopotamia and shows that even then beer was known and valued in society. Beer also played an important role in the legislation of that time, in the Code of Hammurabi, the collection of Babylonian laws. Beer establishments were mentioned as places that were monitored especially strictly. The owner of a tavern had to maintain order, and if criminals gathered in his establishment, he could be sentenced to death. The ancient Egyptians were also great beer lovers. The pyramid builders received about a liter of beer every day for their work. Interestingly, high-ranking officials received as much as 5 liters a day, which highlights how important beer was in ancient society. The earliest fragments of the Maya calendar, 2 fragments of an ancient wall, may contain the earliest evidence of a pre-writing Maya calendar. In these images, in particular, a deer's head appears, adorned on top with a dot and a line, which represents one of the dates in the 260-day calendar cycle. These fragments were found in a temple built 2,300 to 2,200 years ago in what is now Guatemala, in Central America. A number of ancient pre-Columbian American civilizations, including the Aztecs, Maya, Mixtecs, and Zapotecs, tracked time using 13-day cycles marked by numbers, along with 20-day cycles associated with gods. In such a calendar, each day was assigned both a number and a reference to a deity, resulting in 260 unique combinations before the entire cycle repeated. It is believed that the indigenous people used their calendar to determine the timing of important ceremonies, recorded historical dates in it, and tried to use it to predict future events. So far, the earliest evidence of the calendar being used by ancient people has been found on stone monuments dating back to around the 1st century before Christ. Now, David Stewart from the University of Texas at Austin and his colleagues have found evidence that the Maya may have used this calendar a century earlier. Earlier, back in 2001, this group was conducting excavations in the area of the San Bartolo Archaeological Complex, which includes the La Pinturas Pyramid. What does Pinturas mean? During the excavations, it turned out that the Maya who inhabited this city repeatedly rebuilt the buildings, demolishing previous structures and using them in particular to lay the foundation of the pyramid. While sorting through pieces of plaster extracted from the base of the pyramid, the scientists discovered 2 fragments that fit together perfectly, forming the symbol of the corresponding date of the excavation of the ancient civilization. Located not far from the northern coastal city of Trujillo in Peru, the ancient city of Chanchan offers a unique opportunity to glimpse into the fascinating world of the Chimu civilization. As one of the most extensive pre-Hispanic cities in South America, Chanchan is renowned for its complex system of underground canals, tunnels, and spaces, which provided efficient management of water and other resources. At the height of the city's prosperity, its secret underground infrastructure also served as a refuge during harsh weather conditions and possible invasions by aggressors. Today, visitors can explore the archaeological complex of Chanchan to uncover its unique history, which includes both above-ground and underground remains of the complex social structure of the Chimu civilization. As is known, Chanchan is not only an archaeological monument but also a testament to the highly developed Chimu civilization. These structures demonstrate the advanced technologies and skills of ancient people in the fields of architecture and resource management. The soap lady from Philadelphia in 1975 in Philadelphia during improvement works at an old cemetery. Two strange bodies of a man and a woman were discovered, which did not look like the deceased usually do. Instead, their bodies turned into soap people due to the process of saponification or soap formation. This process occurs when the body's fat tissue, under certain conditions such as alkaline soil and specific enzymes, turns into a wax-like substance, known in scientific terms as adipocere. After their discovery, the remains became part of museum exhibits. In the 1990s, the man's body was removed from display for detailed study. Radiological studies revealed the presence of pins in the tissues, which were used to secure the burial shroud. Studies also showed that the man was European, died at the age of 40-50, and had engaged in physical labor. The woman's body was also examined, and pins were also found in it, while blonde locks of hair remained on her skull. Her skeleton was strong, indicating good health, but she was almost completely missing her teeth. Currently, the man's body is in the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, and the woman's body is in the Mutter Museum in Philadelphia. Cases of saponification are rare, but they show how unique the processes that occur with human remains after death can be. Thanks to the large amount of fatty tissue, their bodies were able to remain well preserved for many years. Research and study of such rare cases as the soap couple allow scientists to better understand the processes that occur in the human body after death, and also expand our knowledge about the history and culture of different eras. The Florentine diamond is a sparkling gem. The legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow. It weighed 137.45 carats, and it impressed not only with its size, but also with its unusual yellowish hue. According to legend, the diamond first belonged to the influential Medici family, and then ended up in the hands of the Habsburg dynasty, where it became part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable gems in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1918, its traces were lost. The stone was allegedly taken to South America, and according to rumors, was later split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and to hide its origin. To this day, the location of the Florentine's pieces remains unknown. If it was indeed divided, its history is shrouded in mysterious secrets, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies in some private safe today, waiting for its new appearance. A monument of Pictish culture. Archaeologists from the University of Aberdeen have discovered a monument of Pictish culture. The team of scientists discovered a 1.5-meter stone in a farmer's field during geophysical research. The slab is covered with classic Pictish abstract symbols, featuring triple ovals, a comb, a mirror, a crescent, a V-shaped rod, and double discs. According to archaeologists, it dates back to the 5th or 6th centuries. The stone was used in the construction of a massive building from the 11th or 12th century, which was built over a Pictish settlement. The discovery was made in Aberlemno, near Forfar. The university knows this place for its unique Pictish standing stone. The most famous of them is a slab that is believed to depict scenes from the Battle of Nectansmere, which largely determined the subsequent history of England and Scotland. There are about 200 known Pictish monuments similar to the discovered stone, and they were usually found by accident by farmers or builders during road construction. The Picts were Celtic-speaking peoples who lived in the northeast of present-day Scotland during the late Iron Age, Rome and Britain, and the early Middle Ages, and were conquered twice. Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, about 1.8 million years ago, archaeologists found various bite marks on the bones of early humans. The first marks are wide, jagged notches along the edges, like those made by a chisel. These are left by a crocodile. The second layer, on top of the first, are narrow punctures and long, shallow scratches, typical of a large cat, such as a leopard or a similar predator. People were first attacked by a crocodile, then a land predator found the remains. Sadly, this was common in the early savanna. Water attracts both prey and predators. Such findings challenge the idea that humans have always been hunters. 2 million years ago, humans were just one of the elements in the food chain. At one stage of evolution, we were often the resources ourselves. A standard trip to get water for a human was a chance to find food, and just as much of a chance to be eaten by a predator. This is a good indicator of how dangerous the watering hole was before humans became top predators. Ancient banks, the practice of lending valuables for interest, originated in deep antiquity, long before the appearance of money. Even back then, people exchanged goods or services with the obligation to return more than they received. With the advent of a monetary economy, usury became the foundation of credit operations. In one of the oldest legal documents, the Laws of Hammurabi, compiled in the 18th century before Christ, there are already articles regulating usury. For example, they prohibited collecting debts from people affected by natural disasters, which can be seen as an early form of borrower protection. Real banks as full-fledged credit institutions appeared in Babylon around the 8th century before Christ. These institutions provided services related to money storage, lending, and currency exchange. In ancient Greece, banking functions were performed by trapezites, people who were engaged in currency exchange. However, their activities were not limited to this. They opened accounts for their clients, provided loans, and even carried out money transfers. Thus, even then, banks played an important role in the economy. In ancient and medieval times, lending at interest was often condemned and prohibited. The religions of Christianity and Islam actively fought against usury, considering it an immoral and wrongful activity. Nevertheless, the need for loans always existed, and people found ways to circumvent religious prohibitions. For example, in medieval Europe, Jews, who were not subject to Christian prohibitions, often became money lenders, which made them an important part of the economic system of that time. The Tower of Skulls in Mexico. To be fair, it should be clarified that the phenomenon of a Tower of Skulls is not something new or unique. However, it was in 2020 that archaeologists had the opportunity to discover yet another such height. A new tower was found near the previously explored one, on the territory of the Templo Mayor Temple Complex, which is located near Mexico City. The Tower of Skulls has a diameter of nearly 5 meters and contains remains of over 100 people. Archaeologists date the creation of this structure to the end of the 15th century. The Mexican government has already responded to the discovery. Mexico's Minister of Culture, Alejandro Frausto, called the find the most impressive archaeological discovery in the country in recent years. Underground rituals. In the depths of the mountainous region of central Anatolia lies the ancient underground city of Ursini. According to research and local legends, Ursini was carved into the rocks during the time of the Getic kingdom. Around 800 before Christ, the city was intended to protect against enemy invasions and bad weather. Ursini extends 4 levels deep into the earth, including living quarters, public spaces, and even a small underground temple. A unique ventilation system consisting of long, narrow channels provided fresh air. In addition, the city had wells for water and places for storing food. The most mysterious part of Ursini is the Hall of Shadows, where, according to legend, mysterious rituals were performed. The walls of the hall are decorated with intricate reliefs depicting mythical creatures and symbols, the meaning of which remains unknown to this day. Historians believe that Ursini could have been used as a temporary shelter during times of war or natural disasters, but some studies suggest that the city could have been a permanent residence for a special segment of the population. The oldest mineral on Earth. In 2001, a unique zircon crystal was discovered in Australia, which is recognized as the oldest mineral on Earth. Its age is an impressive 4.4 billion years, which makes it a witness to the earliest stages of our planet's formation. This tiny crystal gives scientists the opportunity to understand how the Earth cooled and formed during its first billions of years. Today, this rare artifact can be seen at the Wisconsin Geological Museum in Madison, United States of America. Zircon is interesting not only because of its age, but also because its resistance to destruction allows it to preserve information about ancient processes that took place on Earth. This makes it a true keeper of our planet's history. How did Catholics judge the deceased? Once, a strange and terrifying event occurred in the history of the Catholic Church. Pope Stephen VI decided to hold a trial over his predecessor, Pope Formose. There was one problem. Formose had already been dead and buried for a year. Incredibly, Stefan VI still decided to go through with it. He ordered Formose's body to be taken out of the grave, dressed in papal robes, and seated on the throne in one of the most famous churches in Rome. And then the trial began, which became known as the Terrible Synod or the Cadaver Synod. Since Formose naturally couldn't speak and defend himself, there was a man sitting behind him who pretended to be his voice. In the end, the dead pope was accused of all the sins and punished. They cut off the fingers on his right hand, dragged his body through Rome on a horse, and threw him into the river. I want to remind you that all this was happening to someone who was already dead. But Pope Stephen VI couldn't enjoy this outcome for long. People were outraged by such a terrible act, and soon a rebellion began. Stephen was put in prison, where he was eventually killed. Later, another pope, Ioan IX, forbade putting dead people on trial so that this would never happen again. The body of Formose was found by monks, and he was buried again, this time with proper respect in St. Peter's Cathedral. So even the most important people in history can sometimes do terrible and strange things. Write your opinion in the comments. Don't you think that there have been too many terrible scandals associated with the Catholic Church throughout its history? And what do you think could be the reason for that? The earliest gibbon fossil archaeologists found a fossil of a small monkey in Yunnan province in southwest China, which pushes the gibbon fossil record back by 7 to 8 million years. And I talk about this all the time. Literally, one archaeological discovery can change a lot. Now, Chinese and American archaeologists have the opportunity to fill an evolutionary gap. In the history of small apes in East Asia, this fossil belongs to Yuanmupithecus xiaoyuan. This family of apes includes 20 species of gibbons that live in tropical and subtropical Asia. Archaeologists had previously only been able to find fragments of teeth or jaws of ancient animals. The oldest previously discovered fossil remains of this gibbon are no more than 2 million years old. As you can already guess, the latest discovery is very valuable. Archaeologist G discovered the facial bone of a Yuanmupithecus xiaoyuan infant, aged 2 years or younger. The jaw fragments were compared with the skulls of living gibbons, which confirmed the authenticity of the discovery. After analyzing the teeth, scientists concluded that the gibbon living in Monkey Asia weighs about 6 kilodolars. Genetic studies show that the Hylobatidae diverge from the line leading to great apes and humans about 17 to 22 million years ago. But there is still a 10 million year gap that needs to be filled with additional discoveries in the evolutionary history of the Hylobatidae, especially the gap between 2 and 6 million years ago, which was a critical period for the transition of ancient primates to modern ones. The study was published in the International Anthropological Journal, Journal of Human Evolution. In parallel with the ancient gibbons, Chinese scientists decided to re-examine dinosaur egg fossils and came to a serious conclusion. Corrugated spheres in South Africa are artifacts that are metallic spheres, about 2.5 centimeters in diameter, and some of them have 3 parallel lines engraved around the sphere. Some of the spherical finds are made of bluish metal with white spots, while others have an outer shell and are filled with a white, jagged substance. This strange sponge turns to dust when exposed to air, while the outer shell is harder than steel. The researcher of the find, John Petersburg, stated that the proportions are balanced greatly by the equipment's measuring capabilities. The artifact is estimated at 2.8 million years old. A wooden sculpture of Christ in the Belarusian village of Nesutichi, in the half-ruined chapel of the Church of St. Archangel Michael, restorers discovered a wooden sculpture of the crucified Christ. The find is over 250 years old, and experts call it a real miracle. After so many years, it has hardly suffered any damage. Research has shown that the sculpture was carved from pear wood, presumably in the 17th century. Its exact origin is still unknown, but there are theories that it could have been made in Italy or Prussia. Finds like this are rare. They remind us how many secrets may still be hidden even in forgotten corners. Stone Age settlement in Tibet. A number of Stone Age settlements have been discovered by scientists in recent years in Tibet, and their research has been an important breakthrough for the archaeological periodization of human history. In the territory of the Tibet Autonomous Region, during 2020-21, a group of archaeologists studied the Mapotsu settlement in Kangmar County, Shigatse City. During the excavations, 10 ash pit burials were found, which are about 4,000 years old. The finds include items made of stone, ceramics, and bone, as well as ornaments made of shells, jade, and more. Mapotsu is the oldest settlement among the known sites in the interior regions of the Tibetan Plateau. Judging by the finds, ancient people here engaged in fishing and hunting. Mapotsu will provide new opportunities in the search for answers to questions related to the culture of the late Paleolithic in Tibet and human adaptation to high-altitude conditions. In 2021, archaeologists found 14 ancient burials in Banbar County, Chamdo City, and unearthed 40 artifacts, including items made of ceramics, bronze, turquoise, and spherical objects. Senior researcher of the Tibet Institute for the Preservation of Cultural Relics, Chen Zunjun, stated that the chronology of the finds, based on dating data, belongs to two periods, about 1,800 and 1,100 years ago. In 2021, the Cultural Department of Tibet launched 21 archaeological projects and conducted research on 277 cave temples. They also completed preliminary assessments of the possible impact of 12 major infrastructure projects on the preservation of cultural heritage sites. The history of Port Arthur Prison. About an hour-and-a-half drive from the capital of Tasmania, Hobart, lies one of the darkest places in Australia's history, the penal settlement of Port Arthur. From 1830 to 1877, the most dangerous criminals of the British Empire were held here. After Great Britain lost the ability to send prisoners to the United States, they chose the distant lands of Australia. Initially, Port Arthur was just a timber station, but soon it turned into a full complex with 60 buildings, including prisons, churches, solitary confinement cells, and even well-kept gardens created by the convicts themselves. More than 12,500 people suffered here. The conditions were harsh: underground cells, isolation in complete darkness and silence, hard physical labor. All of this broke the will and left deep marks on the psyche. One of the most gruesome stories is the murder of Joseph Shadowvort in the prison church. He was hacked to death by another inmate right during work. The motive remains unknown. And on the island of the dead, where prisoners were buried, one of the convicts allegedly encountered the devil himself. Since the prison was closed, stories about ghosts have started to appear here, from sounds, footsteps, and children's laughter to apparitions of women and soldiers. Port Arthur is considered one of the most haunted places in Australia. Today, it is an open-air museum and a United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization heritage site. But even on a sunny day, there is something unsettling here. It's the memory of those who spent their last days within these walls. I would be glad if you leave a kind comment under the video and share this video with your friends. And I strongly recommend you watch the previous video about alien discoveries made by archaeologists, which undeservedly received little attention. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.